welcome to today's episode of Daily Musings. I have my phone here with me because it has some things that we are going to talk about today. So I've warned you for the last few days that we are going to talk a lot about goals because at the end of every year, I spend quite a bit of time thinking about my systems, how to have a really effective upcoming year to bring the best out of myself and so on. So what I wanted to talk about today was a launching off point from yesterday's video. So yesterday's video was all about clearing space and basically clearing the mental decks in true getting things done fashion, David Allen style. So if you missed that video, definitely check it out. Today we're going to be moving forward, and the next step that I like to do, and this is something that I integrate in my life on a regular basis anyway, but it's an annual review. So I love reviews because it's one thing to do things and take action and conquer the world, but if you don't reflect on the experience, then are you actually getting are you extracting the full value of that experience? It's sort of the same reason that I think journaling is such a useful tool to better appreciate and enjoy your life, because journaling allows you to reflect on the experiences that you've had, which then allows you to deepen your appreciation for those experiences and train your mind to capture the moments a little bit more when you're living them. So I find that journaling makes my life more rich, probably because it's a type of review. It's a type of you're reliving, in a sense. It's like when you journal, it's sort of like telling a story, not to get too much on a side tangent, by the way, but this all connects. But you know, when you something interesting happens to you and you tell a story to your friend about the interesting thing that happened to you, and then you tell your mom, and then you tell your other friend, and the more you repeat the story, the more it kind of becomes memorable to you. Whereas it could have just been like a random incident that you'd forget, a day later. But the process of crystallizing it into a story, and we do this naturally, conversationally all the time, but doing it via journaling is a lot more deliberate. So I find the same to be true of just doing reviews of the week, which is, I usually spend an hour or two on it every week. Just think, okay, what did I want to do? What did I actually do? What were like the wins and the misses and lessons and things? Because it's a way to integrate the experiences that you've had. So that's why I'm a big fan of reviews. So of course, a part of my yearly goal setting process would involve doing a review of the entire year. Now, there's a process that I've gone through a lot in the past. It's a free online resource called the Year Compass. So if you just, I think, Google Year Compass, it'll give you different options for printable formats or online digital fillable formats. It's a really nice, I've used it for setting goals and intentions for the upcoming year, I think for 3 or 4 years, with varying degrees of involvement. There's been years where if you go through it, like actually super thoroughly, it probably takes like 3 hours, 4 hours. Like, it's a pretty intense booklet, but it gives you a lot of interesting launching off questions when you're thinking about, okay, well, how was my year? So one thing that I took away from that is, okay, let's just harvest everything that you did in the year and just put it on a document. So what I like to do is I like to divide my document into categories of life. So you can create whatever categories you want. So the ones that I use, just to give you an idea, and this is a lot, so maybe you would want less than this, but just to give you an idea. You can get these from like Michael Hyatt, or others have their own versions of this, but I have business, so business career. I have home, so that home, location, and tangible, sort of like where I live and the stuff that I have. It's kind of like anything from my location in the world to, do I have the patio furniture that I want, whatever. Relationships with anyone, so social, romantic, children, etc. I have travel and adventure. I have my emotions and well-being. I have health and fitness. I have financial, habits, education and skill development, purpose and contribution, fun, relaxation, creativity, and then finally character development and story. So I usually just write these as headers, and then what I'll do is I'll go through everything that happened in the year. There's a few ways that I harvest the data for this. So one way that I like to collect data for this is to just go to my calendar, because normally I'll have a calendar where important events are written down. So if I attended a wedding or any oh, I forgot I had these 4 meetings with this one person or something like that, I'll tend to see bigger events in my calendar. And that's a good starting point to see, okay, how did I actually spend my year? What are the things that I did? And I like capturing big things and small things. A trip I took, or an experience I had, big or small, doesn't matter. So when I do this process, I actually end up with quite a big list of the things that I've accomplished in the year, and not even just accomplished. That's too ambition focused. I'm thinking more experienced. What are the things that I experienced this year? And this is going to be like my list looks like it's a really big list. There's a lot of wins. I've had a couple pretty good course launches. There's some pretty major losses, like when I was scammed out of a bunch of money. There's some really interesting kind of like life type experiences, like adventures I took, etc. So it ended up being like a pretty substantial list. So I really like to mine my brain for everything, using the calendar as my starting point. And then what I'll do is I'll actually go through previous weekly reviews, because I do weekly reviews pretty much every week throughout the whole year. I think last year I probably had like 50 or 45 to 50 weekly reviews. So I do miss sometimes, but not very often. But that's a really rich resource of, okay, what was I doing on a week by week basis? What are the highlights? I'll be able to, just looking through these, it's like, oh yeah, this. And that'll trigger some ideas of other things I did or experienced throughout the year. And eventually you have this giant list. I like to do this just starting like a new blank document on Word or whatever processor you like to use. So after you go through the calendar, and if you have any records of, like if you do anything like weekly reviews, or if you have a journal that you can go through to remind you of key experiences, this is great. I mean, honestly, this alone is really worthwhile because you'll treasure it. You'll have an understanding of what 2020 or whatever year this is means to you, what it meant to you, what happened, what were the main beats of the year. And even having that understanding gives the year itself a little bit more, weight, because you're not just, it's sort of like, you know how if you have a dream, you could remember it in the moment for like the next 2 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever. But if you don't think about it anymore, you forget it. And then you're like, oh, I had this weird dream, but I don't remember. It could be 20 minutes later. But if you go through the process of writing down that dream, you're thinking through it, you can actually remember it in quite a bit of detail. And you might still remember that dream really well, even days later, even weeks later. So I feel like it's the same thing when you're reviewing your year. You're allowing the memories to become more tangible, more tied to the year itself, more wrapped up in like a greater context. And that in and of itself is a really, really useful process to do on a micro level, on a weekly basis, and on a macro level, on an annual basis. So that's pretty much, I don't want to get too much in the weeds with this discussion, but one more thing that I think is a really useful idea, and this is especially easy to do if you keep track of your weekly comings and goings. But I like to keep track of, okay, what's something I'm learning? What's a lesson that I'm working on? What are the aha moments I'm having? And I'll write about these things in my weekly reviews, and I'll notice common themes, key lessons. Actually, hold that thought, because I can show you. I have it up on my wall right now. I'm just going to grab it. Try not to, I'm gripping it. Definitely. Trying not to stop the video, you guys. I have a printed piece of paper that's up on my workspace, and it says lessons from 2020. And this is just a list of like main things that I was really working through in the year 2020, main things that I was like realizing. I'll just tell you a couple. But having something like this, it's not like you're just taking quotes from someone else or advice from someone else. This is like life advice from myself, from my own hard-won lessons. So this is the kind of thing I want in front of me. I want to remember these lessons that I'm learning. It's an interesting way to approach your year. So life isn't what you think, it's what you do, and that's where the story is. That's one of my lessons to myself. True curiosity equals taking action, because we can all talk the talk, but actually doing something about that curiosity, that's when it's like, okay, you're actually super curious about this. Compare myself to my best self, not to others, because being outstanding is a choice. Be unleashed. The leashes I wear are reasonableness, laziness, other people's expectations, 1,000 forms of fear, see a shout out there, not having self-acceptance, not owning my accomplishments, and a laundry list of others. So these are my these are like my self-imposed leashes, and I want to remember that. My greatest strength is my unending belief in the best case scenario. Just a bunch of this stuff. It's really good to remember. So that's one of my favorite parts about doing an annual review as well. It's like, what are the major life lessons that I'm mining from the year. And this gives my years a sense of progress. So it's not like this big blob of time is passing where it's like 5 years past, I have no idea what happened. It's sort of like, oh, okay, I'm continually on this journey of growth and development. And the things that I do, however big or small, actually matter and actually contribute to my growth and the betterment of others and myself. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. I'll catch you guys tomorrow.